Hey everybody, Randy here with Stay Broke Business Consulting. Welcome to day 63 of building $1 million business in 1 year. So yesterday I went with my kids to the smash room, and they also had the paint room there. And I was talking a little bit after we got done with that about these kind of pop-up businesses that get super popular, really trendy businesses that come in. You'll see one pop up, and then all of a sudden you'll see this oversaturation of them, and then they start shutting down and they start disappearing, and you'll see one or two hanging on, but like not see a lot of people there all the time. It really just got me wondering, am I right about how I think about these businesses? And I want to make sure that what I'm saying is correct. So I started doing some research this morning, really kind of digging into them, and I think what I found is that I was pretty spot on with what I was saying yesterday. These trendy businesses, you got to be careful if you get into them. Most of them are franchises, and we're talking about, specifically, I'm talking about Froyo, frozen yogurt, because I watched that blow up. I was living in Wilmington, and there were these college students that did a senior project, I think it was, and they did it on a frozen yogurt store. So they went ahead and actually followed through with it, and they opened up a chain of frozen yogurt stores, and they made a killing off of it, and then they sold it off, and they got out, and they made a bunch of money. It's all documented. You can go look it up, but it was really cool. So that was the first like real business like that I was exposed to. And I've been kind of noticing the trend, and it moves from one to the next, right? So from frozen yogurt, the next big boom I remember seeing was the escape rooms. I remember there was one that popped up here, and it was super popular. And then next thing you know, there's like 15 of them in a 5-mile radius, right? And now the people going to them gets too spread out. And then they start not filling up. Now they're not covering their expenses, so then they start shutting down. And even we have one right beside our office. There's hardly ever any people in there. I'm sure it's busier on the weekends, which we're not in the office on the weekends most of the time. But like during the week, there's nobody. I don't know how they're covering expenses in that place. I saw it go to the axe throwing. Axe throwing, it just took off all of a sudden, and then it was everywhere. And now the place we went to yesterday, like I said, the smash place we went to was an axe throwing place. The axe throwing place closed down, moved out, and now we have this place there. And now I'm seeing these smash rooms pop up all over the place, which I have been for the last like year and a half, 2 years. But now they're starting to oversaturate, just like everything else has. Most of these are franchises. So to get into them, they all sound appealing, right? Because it always seems like such a simple thing that you're selling, and they're always busy whenever they first start up. It's the new shiny thing, and you think, man, that looks like low overhead. And then you start looking into the profit margins, and they start talking about all these crazy profit margins and the growth. Some of these are going, 600, 800% in a year growth. Like, it's insanity. And then just like that, they're gone. And it sounds super appealing, but what they're not taking into account is if you are franchising, you have a bunch of franchising fees usually. You have the initial startup cost, the franchise dues, the build out, all that kind of stuff. And then you have to try and keep it relevant. So whatever else you're doing, escape rooms, you have to keep changing the puzzles, changing the games, getting more and more sophisticated, more and more technology involved. The frozen yogurt, they just got oversaturated. There was so many different brands of frozen yogurt shops, and then all of a sudden they just started shutting down all over the place. And now if you look around, there's one or two of them around, and that's it. Let's go through a little bit of the research that I found that backs up what I'm saying. So frozen yogurt franchises, you're talking about the 2010 era, right? Typical stores generated 750,000 to 800,000 in annual revenue with a 10 to 15% profit margin, which is in the same profit margins as like restaurants are, right? So this is not out of the ordinary, but that's not a lot of revenue for the amount of work. You're talking about a certain level of employee. You're talking about entry-level employees that are typically, you're paying them minimum wage. So The better employees are like the high school students or retirees, and then you're trying to fill in the void, which is usually the owner or the manager picking up all the other shifts. Average owner income around $93,000 a year, which in 2010 seems like a lot of money, but it was short-lived, right? It was a battle every year. Top performing outlets like 16 Handles saw revenues up to $869,000 in 2022, with some exceeding $1.5 million through, though these were the outliers, right? The people really making the money in these businesses are the franchisers, the first ones that come up with these ideas and then start selling locations. They're getting fees from every franchise. All they're doing is setting up the essentially the operation side of it, having the policies, the procedures, all the things that we talk about to be able to be efficient and consistent. That's all they're doing. They're putting in the time and the effort to create policies, procedures, figure out what pricing tools they're going to use, figuring out what kind of payment system they're going to use. And that's what they're doing. And then they're selling that to people to go in, and then those people still have to find a location. They have to pay, like, a lot of times $50, $100, $200,000 to get into these franchises, and then all your setup fees, all these other things. They expect you to have a bunch of liquidity in your assets. That way, if things go south, they still make sure they get their money back out of it. Those are the people making the money. So if you really want to get into these trendy businesses and you want to make money on it, the way to do that is to be the first one. Just like anything, be the first one and then sell that idea to other people and get it while it's hot. So then you go into the escape rooms. That's the one that grew in 2015, grew 317%. And then in 2016, grew 800% in 1 year. And then it stabilized. And then by the end of 2023, around 1,950 facilities existed. They just kind of blew up and then went away. Escape rooms weren't generating a lot of money, $15,000 to $50,000 per month, but the profit margins were like $50,000 until you start figuring in the franchising fees and the build out costs. You had to keep redoing the games or nobody's going to come. Once you solve it once, you can't go back again. So they had a super high failure rate, and it's because of revival cost and the high risk. It was a terrible business to get in unless you were first and you sold it off or you started the franchise. Let's go to Axe next. And I'll do a summary on all these. So the axe throwing, this one is still winding down, I guess. And, it was a $215 million industry in 2023 with 1.9% annual growth. And this is because this was international, right? This is one that was all over the place. You're talking about 300 million in 2024, and then it went global and got to 2.1 billion by the end of 2024. They're saying it's going to keep climbing because even though it kind of peaked, I feel like already in the United States, it's still spreading all over the world, and they're talking about $5.1 billion by 2033. But again, the caveat is they pop up, and if you're not that one or two that survive in your area, then what happens next? And most of these places, the ones that are still surviving, they're doing other things, like it's a go-kart track, or they have an arcade, or they're, a bar and a restaurant, and they have the axe throwing in the back, and they have bands, and they have this and that and the other thing. So I feel like a lot of these numbers are skewed because of the things that come with it. But with those, you also have the insurance costs, and the premiums are crazy on that because the risk is crazy, right? You get one person that loses a toe and now everything's ruined. So that's something else you got to think about with these more risky ones like axe throwing. Same with the rage rooms. The rates on them the premiums are crazy because what if a piece of glass goes in somebody's eye? Like, insurance company hate these types of businesses. So with the axe throwing, the typical franchises, the starting, between 116,000 and 278,000, depending on brand and build out. So they were absolutely crazy. And then their royalty fees are around 6%. So you're giving away a lot of the profit that you're making. Then we go into the smash rooms. There's not a ton on that. They're saying 40 to 80% margins right now. It's still the new shiny thing, so it's still blowing up. But let's go through the chart that we got put together. Frozen yogurt, high early growth, now saturated, declining significantly. Revenue and margins, 750,000 to 1.5 million at 10 to 15% margins, which are terrible. But like I said, that's where a lot of restaurants and stuff are. My goal is, at our utility company, my goal is 60%. I bill everything at 60, and at the end of the day, we hope to be over 50% whenever we're done. Just to give you an idea of what we're shooting for. And we have a lot of overhead in that, right? Our overhead is, we're paying out $35,000 a week in overhead. So there's a lot of money moving there. Investment and ROI timeline, 300K to 350K, startup, slow ROI. So again, this is on the Froyo. It takes a long time to get all your money back out of it. Risk and longevity, moderate to high risk because of saturation, heavy franchise insight, heavy franchise fees, and again, saturation. That's the biggest thing with that one. Let's go to escape rooms. Again, escape rooms were global. So they're working on a different, off different numbers. So 1.2 billion global, rapid early growth. Now it's stabilizing. So that means a lot of them have shut down. You're talking $180,000 to $600,000 per year. But you're saying greater than 50% margins, 7K to 50K investment, quick ROI, return on investment, high failure rate, 46% closure on these. So they close down as fast as they pop up. Franchise fees plus content refresh needed. So those are the franchising issues. You have crazy franchise fees, and then you have to keep, like I said, rebuilding your games, making them more challenging, creating new ones, higher levels, more technology. It's just never ending. All right, let's go to the axe throwing. In the US, 215 million to 300 million. Globally, $2.1 billion. Your CAGR, which is your compound annual growth rate. It's analyzed rate of growth of an investment over a specified period of time, assuming the profits are reinvested. So you're going to have good growth if you don't take any money out of it and you keep reinvesting all your money back into it to continue to help it grow. Revenue and margins, 1.14 million in revenue, average 10 to 32% margin, which is decent if you're on the higher end of that. But what percentage on the higher end, I don't know. 117,000 to 389,000 profitability in the first 2 years, which now if you're paying your salary and that's your full-time job and you're trying to reinvest back into the business, you're not getting a lot of money out of that. Risk and longevity, regulatory complications, and compliance. So they've added new fire codes to it, insurance codes to it. The cities are cracking down on it. It's becoming harder and harder to keep the doors open on those places because of the risk. It takes a few injuries and everything's in jeopardy. Your franchise insight, franchises offer strong support, but take 6 to 10% royalties. Then we move into our smash and rage rooms. We got 227 million market in 2024 and still growing by 10.9% CAGR. They are operating at a 40 to 80% margin, which is absolutely insane, but it's because there's not a lot going into it to keep the doors open, right? You're going to the dollar store or to, whatever local thrift shop, and you're just buying up all the glass that they haven't used or outdated electronics that people are throwing away. But the startup fees are crazy. Investment, 500,000 entry, And then your insurance and rent rates tend to be very high with those. People don't want to rent to those kinds of places because there's such a risk of it closing down, and because of the mess that they make while they're in there. They're banging on the concrete. I saw holes in the concrete floor because people are swinging, sledgehammers and crowbars at the floor, and they're painting the rafters, they're painting everything. Risk and longevity. Risk is high because of legal liability and novelty risk. Like, you do it a couple times and you're not going to go do it anymore. It's not something that people are going to go keep doing on a monthly basis. Most people. Some people will. It was a great outlet. So franchise insights still emerging. Franchise dynamic varies. That's going to work itself out over the next few years, and we'll see how that goes. So we'll keep an eye on that. You want to know how I figured all this stuff out? Very simple. Chat GPT. Not sponsored or anything like that. It's just any type of AI program. There's so much of it out there. It took me, I don't know, I spent 15 minutes putting together all this information. It's just learning how to communicate with it to get the answers that you want back out of it. Missed a couple things the first time, had it add those in, throw together these simple reports for me, and now I'm able to share that info with you and talk about it, and I think it's super cool. This is the kind of stuff I'm interested in. Like, even when I'm not working, like, my mind's always working. How's this business operate? What kind of profits are they making? Is it a good business to get into? How do you make money off these businesses? Because somebody's making the money. Who's making the money? Is it the franchisees, like with Chick-fil-A, or is it just the people that start the franchise? So it's all over the places. Franchises aren't necessarily bad. It depends on the type of business you're getting into and who you're franchising with. If they're really giving you the support that you're supposed to, the startup, the secret sauce, if you will, to help you be successful and minimize your risk. That's all you're trying to do, minimize your risk. That's what you're paying for. So let me know what you think about this content. Let me know if there's other businesses that I missed that I should look into that fit into this kind of bracket here that we're talking about. And as always, like, follow, and subscribe to see what I talk about next. And stay broke.